This is Musical Talk.
Musical Talk.
The UK's independent musical theatre podcast.
Musical Talk. The UK independent musical theatre podcast.
Hello, musical talkers. Welcome back to the program. Today we have a visitor from across the pond. It's not often I get to chat with a fellow countryman or country lady in this sense. Today we will be chatting with Ms. Christine Pedi, a big name in the acting world in the US. Her list of works is never ending. She worked extensively over the years in New York for Forbidden Broadway, which most of our listeners will know very well, especially as it recently had an incarnation here in London at the Vaudeville Theatre. Ms. Pedi is also known for her work with Newsical the Musical, which is a satirical current event show, also based in New York. She also played matron Mama Morton in the Broadway production of Chicago, and also appeared in Little Me alongside Martin Short and Faith Prince. She is known as the Lady of 1,000 Voices, and you can hear at least one of those voices, namely her own, every week on Sirius XM Live's On Broadway channel back in the US. She's incredible, she's talented, she's full of pep, and she's here in London performing at the Crazy Cocks in Piccadilly Circus. You can see her this week only, so don't miss this chance to see a Broadway and New York legend perform right here in our own home. Details of her Crazy Cocks run will be discussed throughout and at the end of today's episode. For now, let's chat with Miss Pedi herself. Follow me this way.
Christine, thank you for joining the program, and welcome to Musical Talk.
It's nice to be here.
Welcome back to London.
I'm very comfortable here in the... Are we allowed to say where I am?
Oh, yeah, we're live from the Savoy, aren't we?
Yes, in the lobby of the Savoy. I think this is the manner to which I think I need to be accustomed. Definitely. Oh, it's beautiful.
Exactly. It's got a long and illustrious history here in London in the theater scene, and you have a history here in London as well, and we'll get to that here in a little while. But first, I just want to give you a little bit of context for the listeners here. Born and raised in New York City, right?
No, outside in the suburbs.
Okay. And
yeah.
What area did you grow up in?
Westchester County, just like the George M. Cohan song, 45 minutes from Broadway.
Of course.
I went to school in New Rochelle, and I went to college in the Bronx at Fordham University, and so I've always been close enough, you know. Always had proximity to the theater. Although I didn't go to my first Broadway show till I was maybe a junior or a senior in high school,
No
which
kidding.
is late, you know.
Sure.
And for someone who lives so close.
Exactly, yeah.
But I definitely made up for lost time.
Excellent. And so when you first started going to shows, your junior, senior year in high school, what were some of the shows that you were exposed to initially?
Well, the first one was that Jerome Kern classic, Very Good Eddie, which was done at the Goodspeed Opera House, and they transferred it to New York. It was a P.G. Woodhouse, a Jerome Kern, a silly little 1910 frolic. But it was a hit. It was a little hit. And my parents had no money. Our tickets were, I think, $5 each. And they were the last row at the top of the little booth theater on Schubert Alley. And when the show began, I remember being stunned because I'd only done community theater or, high school shows. And I couldn't believe the costumes. I couldn't believe the eyelet and the lace and the satin and the ribbons and the bows and the money. I couldn't believe it. I had my father's binoculars, not opera glasses. These were like bird watching glasses.
Proper ones, yeah.
And I needed them. And I was looking at the hems and the buckles on the shoes and the hats and the feathers. I just couldn't believe that they were spending that much money for us. And then after that I saw actually some straight plays. One of the first shows I saw was Dracula and Jean Leclerc, and then I saw oh god, this was a good one, Elizabeth Ashley and Rex Harrison.
Oh, no kidding.
In Caesar and Cleopatra.
Okay.
Ain't Misbehavin'. Those were some of the first shows I saw.
And growing up in the Westchester area, so music in the home growing up, that kind of thing, and how were you introduced to theater and music in your life?
No music in the home. My mother didn't even have the radio on.
Okay.
It was so funny. She just didn't. I think we had, let's say, I would say we had 3 albums in our house. Mm-hmm. Peter Nero, which was swing, like jazz. Barbra Streisand's Greatest Hits, of course. And The Most Happy Fella, which my mother got on her 16th birthday. So this was an old LP. Mm-hmm. That would be a long-playing record, children. And I would listen to all 3 albums on Saturdays when I was home alone cleaning the house, those were my chores. And my mother and father were at work. Most Happy Fella was riveting to me. Mm-hmm. This is grown-up stuff. it's show tunes for sure, but there's so much more going on there. And I don't mean to diminish show tunes by saying that. I just mean that it's sophisticated. And I just listened to it over and over and over and over again. And then when I would visit my cousin, her father had a long-playing record of My Fair Lady.
Okay.
Now, to get him to play it, I'd have to beg, and he'd take it out of the sleeve and treat it with tender loving care and blow on it and rub it and caress it and gently remove all the imperfections and place it down ceremonially on the turntable, and then it would play. And that was the other cast recording that I was addicted to. And so those were two good ones to start with.
Oh, yes.
Two good ones to start with. And then in high school, I did my first musical, which was Godspell.
Lovely.
My second was Bye Bye Birdie, and that one we were offered for $5 or $4 to purchase the cast album. The priest at the boys' school, because I was at all-girls school, and the priest at the boys' school bought them in bulk or something.
Okay.
Now, remember, I'd only been listening to these other cast recordings that were old and on the scratchier side. This was the first cast album I took out of a sleeve, fresh, ripped the plastic open, took it out of the paper sleeve and put it on the record player. And when the overture to Bye Bye Birdie started, it was so clear and so clean and so alive and present and vibrant, and it was like oxygen. And of course I played that to death. So those were some of my first encounters with cast albums. I also have a relative, my dear relative, he's passed away several years, like 20 years ago now, Tom Pedi, who was in the original Guys and Dolls, but I never met him. He was part of like the distant branch of the family on Long Island, and we didn't go to Long Island. He was in the original Iceman Cometh, on Broadway, the original Guys and Dolls. He was Harry the Horse.
Okay.
He was the original Rocky the bartender in, that was Iceman. He was the original Stanley, I think, the waiter in Salesman, Death of a Salesman. So anyway, I never met him, but then I worked in Los Angeles because I did a little theater in high school.
Okay.
In college, I didn't do any, believe it or not. There just wasn't any to be done. And I did radio in college.
Okay.
That's what I did in college, which I'm now using, so it all worked out. But I then did community theater, and when I graduated, and I had a job working for a telethon, which took me to Los Angeles. And so I looked him up, and his name was Tom Petty, and it was love at first sight. He and I were inseparable whenever I was in Los Angeles. A funny, quirky, eccentric, delightful, kind, generous man who loved the theater and loved acting and was passionate about it and brought a smile to everyone's face. To this day, people remember him to me with the fondest recollections. He was so generous. So he and I became very close, and he and I went to London together many times.
Okay.
In his 70s, he and I would, God, the things I did to this poor 70, now I could barely walk now at my age, but getting from one tube stop to another and transferring and so forth, there's a lot of walking sometimes. And I'll never forget, he was probably, 78 years old, and we got to some tube stop, and there was one of those huge escalators that was probably 5 stories high,
Oh, yeah.
and it was broken.
Oh, you're joking.
And it was broken.
Okay.
But we had to get to the theater. The things I put the man through. But he loved the theater, and he loved coming to London because he, like me, would go to the theater all day long. He just loved sitting in a theater and watching. And I would turn and look at his face, and he was so invested in it and so committed to what somebody else was doing, let alone what he did when he himself was on stage. So there's a history that I have in our family, I suppose, but I didn't know about it till I met him.
Sure. So then when did you make that transition from, you say you studied radio broadcasting and journalism at university. When did the acting and performing bug hit you? When did that happen?
Well, I was doing community theater after I graduated college while I was working for this telethon, which was close enough to a career in radio or television.
Okay.
I was a secretary, but it was the closest I was going to get it, fresh out of college. And I was miserable from day one.
Really?
I hate getting up in the morning. Oh, I hate it. I hated it as a kid. I still hate it. And I hated it in the corporate world. But I needed to get my wisdom teeth removed. And in America, you have to be on the the dental program of your employer, and they wouldn't give you dental until you'd been there a year.
Oh, yikes.
So I knew I had to, stick it out for a year. In the interim, I was doing a lot of community theater, doing wonderful community theater with very good budgets and very talented, not just performers, but people behind the scenes.
Sure.
I mean, I played Mabel and Mac and Mabel and Fanny Bryce and Ava Perón and Audrey and Little Shop and Eliza Doolittle and Marion the Librarian and because I have a perfectly serviceable, lovely soprano voice. That's what I studied. In high school, I took lessons with the local piano teacher, who was the second Laurie in Oklahoma. And she talked like this. Hello, Chris. Welcome. All right. And I paid her $7 every Sunday. After I taught Sunday school, my mother in the beginning would write me a check for her. And I studied, but she only gave me soprano songs to sing. So I sang them. And anyway, back to my community theater. I was doing so much community theater, and Fanny Bryce. Did I say I played Fanny Bryce? I was having such a good time doing it. I started to think maybe I wanted to do this for a living, even though I didn't have any professional experience. And a year after I started working there, my dental plan kicked in. I had all 4 wisdom teeth removed in one day, and I thought, now I'm going to quit. And it took me another year to get up the gumption to quit. But I did, and I didn't know anyone in the profession. I didn't know how to go to an audition. I didn't know how to get an agent. I didn't know anything. I did everything by opening up Backstage, the magazine, the newspaper,
Of course, yeah.
and just going to auditions, and going, and going, and going, and going. And finally, I gave up. It really wasn't giving up. It was I surrendered, and I said enough.
Sure.
I had been going to cattle calls with hundreds of girls. I wasn't getting anything. And I said, you know something? That's it. No more. I'm not going to another open call. I am not doing anything until I have an agent submit me like a human being. Okay. So there. Now what's going to happen? Because I'm not going. That's it. I have said no to this demeaning, dehumanizing process. And I simply put it out there that I was going to, treat myself like a decent human being. And I opened up Backstage the next day just to look. I wasn't going on any non-equity calls. And there was a non-equity call for Forbidden Broadway. And I went, oh, boy, I like that show.
Had it been established at this point?
Oh, yes. It had been around for over 10 years, almost 10 years at that point. And I thought, I wonder, oh, geez. And it was an open, non-union call, and I looked up at the sky, and I looked up at God, and I said, okay, but this is the last time.
Of course, right.
And I went to the audition, and they told me of 200 women, I was their first choice.
Amazing.
And they actually wanted me for the New York production, but they also needed somebody, to get out there on the road. So it was actually the best thing ever to be able to see America. We did 67 cities in 103 days, and it was 47 states, and it was on a bus, and it was exhausting, but I was young, and America's beautiful. I mean, I really discovered that. I was in every single state that you could imagine, from the Washington State all the way down to Southern California, to Texas, to Florida, all the way up to New Hampshire, to Fargo, North Dakota, and every place in the middle. And it was really wonderful. And so that's how I started. I just did it through community theater and self-taught, really, in that respect.
How many years did you work for the Forbidden Broadway folks, and what was that experience like?
Oh, for many years, from like 91 to 2000, maybe 2004, 2003, I can't remember, but well over 10 years. And it took me all over the world. I did it in Japan. I did it on the QE2. The QE2,
sure.
Where else? Detroit for a year, which people make fun of, but I loved Detroit. I've done San Diego and Denver and Cleveland and Connecticut and several New York productions. We did Forbidden Hollywood in Los Angeles, in Hollywood. Took it to New York, got a Drama Desk nomination for that. It was just a wonderful experience. It's a beautiful show. It's a funny show. It's it's classic. It's a classic musical theater review, and people love it. Particularly people in our business love it, and I'm so grateful to have been able to do it, and especially when so many of those stars were still around. You know, Carol Channing came to see it. Elaine Stritch came to see it. Cheetah Rivera came to see it. Hal Prince, Stephen Sondheim, Cameron McIntosh, Elaine Page. We have a good sense of humor in the theater.
We do indeed. We like to make fun of ourselves from time to time.
Oh, please, whenever possible.
And what are some of the staple numbers from that are recognizable for people who know the show that you took part in?
Ethel Merman, and there's a classic one is the Merman and Phantom number, which started out as Merman and Joe Gillis from Sunset Boulevard. We were putting up a new production of Forbidden Broadway in New York, and I was bemoaning the fact that there were no real classic Broadway stars that had that specific personality that you could spoof. We have Broadway stars now, but not like the ones we used to have.
Sure,
they're remarkable now, but they're not as eccentric and unusual.
Right.
Carol Channing, Ethel Merman, Robert Preston, Liza Minnelli. We just don't have those anymore. Then I mentioned to Brian Batt how I had just seen Sunset Boulevard, and the microphones were driving me crazy. The gentlemen that were wearing fedoras, their microphones were dangling off the end of their fedora. I said, that was so ridiculous. And Brian said, honey, the sound man would shove it up your nose if you could have his way. They'd shove it down your throat.
Yeah.
They don't care how awkward they look.
Right. And
then I realized, oh my God, we should have Ethel Merman do a number about microphones because there was no one louder, and she lived in the land of she lived at the time where there weren't any microphones.
Of course, yeah.
And so we told Gerard Alessandrini at rehearsal, what about this? What if she did Sing Out Louise? And she really meant it, And he came back. He says he did it during lunch. My memory is that he did it overnight.
Okay.
Regardless, it was quick. And he wrote this great number based on Irving Berlin's "You're Not Sick, You're Just in Love. You don't need amplifying.
Course,
it is not so, you'll be loud as a lion." It was just hysterical. I keep singing, but there's nothing there. I keep trying, but my notes are air. I forget all the words.
From
but
Call Me Madam, is that
yes, it's from Call Me Madam. The tune is from Call Me Madam, and he wrote counter melodies for Ethel to sing opposite the guy whoever's playing Joe Gillis in Sunset. But shortly after Sunset closed, we just replaced it with the Phantom.
Okay.
And now that has become a classic, vintage, evergreen Forbidden Broadway number. Whenever you see it out there in the world, chances are they're always going to have that number in there. And oh gosh, I don't even know anymore. There's this wonderful Cameron McIntosh number. I'm Cameron McIntosh, Napoleon of Broadway, and it's like sweatshirts and T-shirts and something. It's all about his marketing, his what's the term? Merchandising.
Oh yes.
So he's sitting there with a cape like Napoleon, but suddenly he opens it, and on one side there's watches and mugs, and he's just got all of that theater paraphernalia that he's selling. Because back then it's so funny, that was new. Back then. You'd be able to get a souvenir program. And I don't know, maybe mugs and magnets maybe. But now there's T-shirts and sweat socks and, and he really was there at the beginning of all that and many other things. So, yeah, those are some of the classic Forbidden numbers.
Sure. And another thing that you're known for, one of your monikers, is the Woman with 1,000 Voices. Is that correct? Yes.
Well, I don't even know... I first saw that on a placard in Rehoboth Beach.
No kidding.
And God bless them for putting it up there. And I don't know where they got it, but then somebody else called me that, and somebody else called me that. So it's out there, and I appreciate it.
Sure.
Because for years and years and years of doing Forbidden Broadway, I've certainly developed a lot of voices. And now I'm doing a show called Musical the Musical.
Of course, yeah.
And I get to do some of the pop culture icons like Oprah Winfrey or, Joan Rivers.
That has to be a fun one to do.
Oh, Kim Rachel, don't even get me started. I do voices for Howard Stern now, and one of the most terrifying things was being Joan Rivers in heaven, and he was interviewing me live. I was on the radio. I was on the telephone, and he was on the radio. And he was very nice to me, and he's a very lovely man to work for, and I'm very, I'm really flattered, to be honest. I do Liza Minnelli. I do some characters, some television people in America. I don't know if you get them here. Susie Orman is a financial expert, and Nancy Grace is sort of a ferocious right-wing children's advocate. And these are all cable personalities in America.
Exactly, yeah.
Adele, we've thrown Adele in the mix there.
Yes, yeah.
And there are others that I'm forgetting, but that's why Lady of a Thousand Voices came up, you know.
Okay. And so you had all this time on stage, you had all this work you were doing in New York, and at what point did singing in the cabaret acts become a part of your
that was
your
always
professional life?
that was always a goal. It was just a question of the time and the money, because it's incredibly expensive and in no way lucrative.
Okay.
There is no way you will ever make back the money you put into cabaret. So you have to love it.
Okay.
You know, it's like when I was doing cruise ships and I needed charts. I would ask every pianist I knew, do you do charts? And instantly you knew whether this was the person to go to, because some of them go, yes. Others go, and I go, never mind.
Okay.
So the people who go yes will always do charts, and probably do them for a decent price because they just like doing charts. Well, I'll always do cabaret, because to me, I suppose if I really had to pick one and only one medium, that might be the one, only because you can always tell stories through song, and you can always act, and you can even create your own arc if you had to.
Sure.
You know. But I love it, and I think it's one of the most satisfying art forms for everybody involved, the audience and the performer. And I never tire of it. Well, that's not necessarily true. I never tire of performing. I do tire of getting it up and running and ready and all the logistics. You have to be in show business. You have to really understand the business end of show business to be in cabaret, because you're always trying to fill the house and trying to get people back to see, you know, what new stories you're going to tell on that stage. And that can be a little that can deplete your energy at times. But the actual performing, no. Somebody said to me, I'm performing in London at the Crazy Cocks, and my mother, she said, she said, yeah, and you got to do all those shows. And I said, no, once I hit the stage, the work's over. I mean, the hard part's over.
Yeah.
You know, it's how many people are in the audience? Did so-and-so get their tickets? Is all the music Xeroxed? And, you know, now in London, do I have the right hole punch? Because we have different we have different paper size than you guys. So, you know, I punched all my sheet music, wasn't going to bring the binder, and went, wait a minute, you guys don't have the same silliest little things, you know. And that's a lot of administrative work and so forth, but once I'm on the stage, that's easy, and I love it, and I think it's so rewarding.
How has your cabaret act developed over the years, and what sort of incarnations does it take at the moment, without giving too much away from the folks who see your
One of the
show?
first ones I did was all Forbidden Broadway songs, because basically one of the clubs in New York was doing a songwriter series, and they lost one of their performers, and I said, well, I could do a songwriter series for you very quickly. I could do all Forbidden Broadway stuff. From Gerard Alessandrini, it would be all his lyrics. So I created this evening called Forbidden Divas, and then I sort of went the next step for my next show. It was all Comden and Green, because I didn't want to just do impressions. I didn't want to do impressions at all, actually. And I thought, how can I get people to see me without feeling that they're being gypped? And I thought, characters. I need characters. And funny characters. So I immediately thought of Comden and Green and got wonderful responses to this show. And nobody said word one about missing the impressions, because their characters are impressive and funny, and you feel as though you've met the characters that you meet when I'm around, when the Lady of a Thousand Voices is around, because they wrote for strong, funny, complicated, powerful, hysterical women. Absolutely. And then the show I did after that was a beautiful, I took it the next step, characters, but a little more heart and sensitivity, and that took me to Sheldon Harnick.
Okay, sure.
The lyrics of Sheldon Harnick. And the great thing about that show was, here's the comment I got too many times to count. I didn't know any of these songs. I love them. Rule one is people want songs they know.
Yeah.
And that's disappointing for a lot of cabaret performers, because when you want to do new stuff, you realize, I got to give them something they know, because people more often than not want songs they know. And I was so happy to hear that comment, because it meant they were listening, and it meant that they loved Sheldon Harnick, who is the most lovable man alive and is still going strong at 92 and has 3 shows in New York City this season.
Does he really?
Yes, he has the Rothschilds and Sons, which is a reworking of Rothschilds. Okay. He's got Fiddler, which opens very soon for previews with Danny Burstein, and then he has She Loves Me with Laura Benanti and Krakowski, Jane Krakowski, and he's involved in all of them, and he's I love him so. He's a delightful, articulate, refined, intelligent, sensitive, funny, spry, mentally and physically beloved American treasure.
And so the show that you're doing at the Crazy Cox this week in London, what structure will that?
Well, that show is called Great Dames, and I wanted to go back to the Lady of a Thousand Voices, but instead of doing just songs from Forbidden Broadway and just impressions, I threw in a lot of character songs, a lot of comedic songs played by character women in shows, and there's a couple of homages to just great ladies of the stage and screen outright. So the songs are songs about these women, made famous by these women, real or imagined, because I have a song where I'm doing an impression of Ethel Merman. That's about Ethel Merman, but I have a song made famous by Judy Garland. I have an impression of Patti LuPone, but I have a song made famous by, I don't know, Lena Horne, Sure. So it just, I believe you walk away with an absolute heightened affection for passionate, powerful female performers of the stage and screen. Theater in New York is doing very well.
Okay.
I say that because there's always a line of shows waiting to get in to a theater. I know too many people waiting for a theater. We're always looking for original musicals. We love a good revival. These are now classic shows that will live on forever and ever. And now, I mean, we can't bitch and moan and complain about revivals, because we've created an art form that has become like opera. So it's something that helps perpetuate the art form. However, we want new product so that we can keep it going.
Sure.
I love the musical theater, and I'm there to promote it, and I do. I'm on the air. My show is on the air from 9 in the morning to 3 in the afternoon, 6 days a week. Our channel is 24/7, no commercials. We're bringing the theater to people who didn't know it existed. We're bringing the theater to young people who didn't know it was cool. Because when you and I were growing up, you're much younger than I, but if you wanted to listen to the musical theater, you had to go buy the product, bring it home and put it in your device and listen. Now you can sit in your pajamas before this show is over, and you can what's the term? Audition. I like to use that term. Audition music from any show I've mentioned.
Right.
It's accessible, and the fact that I have a program that says, yes, your music is important, I think, I'm sure, has helped a lot of young people who, had they been born in my day, would have felt on the periphery of the cool kids, and wouldn't have had anything to validate their love of musical theater. It's still not cool. Who am I kidding? We're still the theater geeks. I know. It depends on who you ask. But, they're still going to get ridiculed to a degree, I'm sure. But at least there's something that validates it.
Sure.
And
exactly.
they have a place to turn to find it and to revel in it. And that's wonderful. I mean, my biggest gripe with the musical theater in general, though, is it's so expensive to mount a show that it becomes very... It can be very corporate, and it can be, a little cookie cutter at times. Some of it can be. I'm just happy that that, you know, even though all the movie stars and TV stars coming to Broadway take jobs away from people that were getting those jobs 10, 20 years ago, it brings profile to Broadway, and that's important. People like Neil Patrick Harris, James Corden, who now is the host of The Late Show here in America, Stephen Colbert. Stephen Colbert has taken over for David Letterman in America, and he loves the musical theater. So there are a lot, and of course Rosie O'Donnell loves it, and even in his own way Jimmy Fallon too, because he loves all music. So I think that we're in a good place in America to be represented on television to the general public, to the mass audience, and that cannot be undervalued.
So you got a show coming up all this week at the Crazy Conchs from Tuesday to Saturday, is that correct?
Yes, October 20th to the 24th. The 24th is my birthday. Oh, nice. I hate to celebrate alone, people, and because I usually want to kill myself on my birthday. So help me stay alive and positive. And seriously. And it's Nathan Martin is playing. Nathan played when I sang here over a decade, well over a decade ago, like so much over a decade ago. And I'm so thrilled and grateful to the Crazy Conchs because everyone loves this place. First of all, on my radio show in America, I always say I'm playing the Crazy Conchs COQS. That's the official name of that club. I'm at the Crazy Conchs COQS. So anyway, and it's great names. There's Ethel Merman is in it, and Liza Minnelli. There's an entire Mamma Mia medley as sung by Liza.
Oh wow!
Oh yeah. Oh, but it would be in the style of Liza too. There's a big difference, you know.
Exactly.
There's a lot of Forbidden Broadway stuff in there. There's some great Compton and Green. I've got, oh gosh, who else? I'm missing. Oh, there's going to be a big fat medley at the end. Okay. I'm trying to learn Rose's Turn, but it's so hard. If I don't do Rose's Turn, then we're going to do a tribute to Les Mis.
Okay. With
Joan Rivers and Cher and Angela Lansbury and Bernadette Peters singing songs from Les Mis. So one of the two. All those women will show up in one of those two numbers. We're just trying to see if I can remember the words to Rose's Turn. It's that Mama's getting hot, Mama's moving on, Mama da-da-da, Mama, oh geez.
Thank you, Mr.
It's hard. It's hard. Yeah.
That's great. I mean, just to see Mamma Mia in the style of Liza Minnelli, I think worth the price on the ticket
that one's pretty special. That was born out of 9/11. I was so depressed. I was with my pianist. I had been doing a Liza Judy Garland show with a friend of mine, Tommy Femia, and we hadn't performed in a few weeks because of 9/11. And I was at the pianist's house, and I said, we're just sad, you know. And then I started bitching about Mamma Mia, saying, why did they use the original arrangements? Why didn't they change the arrangements and give them something a little more dramatic or theatrical? And, you know, like Take a Chance on Me. And he started to play it like a Harold Arlen tune, the way Liza would sing it. And I said, then I started to laugh. And we started to go through the entire Mamma Mia catalog, show list, and we fiddled with every melody and created a montage of songs from Mamma Mia as if Kander and Ebb had written them.
Okay.
And they were being arranged by, I don't know, Peter Matz or something. And it just brought us such joy, and we smiled and we laughed, and it was the first happy moment that either of us really had that took us out of what had happened a few weeks earlier. I'd say about maybe 2 weeks earlier.
Wow.
So it's a good luck piece, I think.
Sure. I mean, I'm smiling just
it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
I'm already smiling.
Oh, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. It makes me laugh just thinking about it. So, yeah. Should I do Liza? I mean, do you want me to do impressions on this little podcast?
Listen, it's terrific. It's Liza Minnelli. And you gotta come. You gotta come to the Crazy Conchs, COQS, and see great James. Bernadette Peters would love it if you would come to the Crazy Conchs, COQS. To see Christine Pedi and great dames. Angela Lansbury would like it too. Of course, she's from London, and she's so very happy that Christine has joined her here. Anyway.
And all of the above.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, all of the above and many more will be at the Crazy Cock COQS. October 20th to the 24th. I'm so excited. I can't wait to be. I'm so happy to be here. And what I wanted to say earlier, I'm so grateful to them for making this possible. There is no American cabaret performer who doesn't want to perform in London, and vice versa. But it's so difficult to make it happen. And the Crazy Cocks has found a way, COQS, has found a way to get us here. And it's so appreciated. I'm so grateful to them for caring enough about this art form and for embracing the Americans who do it. They don't have to do that, and they are. And I couldn't be more grateful. One thing that I do every year in America is my holiday show. There's no business like snow business, and we just call it snow business now. I'm doing it for the 8th year, this coming year in New York at Feinstein's, which is a new collaboration. Feinstein's is now connected to 54 Below, so it's called Feinstein's 54 Below. And if anybody's in America on December 12th, or you have friends, it's a Saturday night, and it's a festive, wonderful, funny, talk about impressions, I do the 12 Divas of Christmas. And I have people pick names out, well, it is, but I have people pick names out of a hat, so I don't have to do the same 12 every night, because there's about 25 names in the hat.
Sure.
So that mixes it up for me. I don't know who's coming next. You know, and then at the end I go backwards in reverse. You know what I mean? 12 swans are swimming. You know what I mean? 6 geese away. It's crazy. 5 golden rings. I go 5 diamond rings. Anyway, so those are the things I'm up to. Crazy Cock COQS, October 20th to the 24th. And Feinstein's 54 Below in New York City, December 12th for the holidays.
Feinstein's 54 Below does amazing work. We've played it several times on the show already.
You know what else I'm doing that actually would be of interest to your listeners? Playbill has cruises, the Playbill cruises, Playbill on the High Seas. And I'm going to be doing their February cruise of the Caribbean. Oh, lovely. And okay. Who doesn't want to be there instead of, here, or New York? You're both awful in February, and that's it. It's just the truth. Yeah. And so who wouldn't want to be in the tropics? So I'm going to be doing all the interviews of all the stars. Christine Ebersol, Judy Kuhn, Liz Calloway, Santino Fontana, Cheyenne Jackson. There was another ugly guy. Santino Fontana, Cheyenne Jackson. Tony Yazbek. He's a wonderful dancer-singer from On the Town. So me and those ugly fellas are going to be on the Playbill cruise in February. And that's a lot of fun because we're all together on the boat. Everyone gets to know each other. It's just us. I don't think there are any other passengers that aren't part of the cruise, part of the Playbill, part of the cruise. And so you really develop a rapport with everyone. And I'm looking forward to it. But I can't wait till my time at the Crazy Cock COQS.
Lovely. Christine, thank you so much for being on the show. Break a leg with your run here in London, and look forward to hearing more stuff from you in the future.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for doing this, and thank you to all your listeners. I'm so happy that this podcast exists.
Christine Pedi is performing for this week only at Crazy Cocks. Call 020-7734-4888 for all of your ticketing information. Thanks again to Christine for being on the program. Go and see her show while you can, folks. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you at the theater. This episode of Musical Talk presented and edited by David Herzog. Copyright Musical Talk 2015. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter. You can follow us on Twitter at Musical Talk, and you can follow me on Twitter as well at David Herzog 06. Bye-bye, folks.